Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. We're going to be starting fairly soon here. If everyone could find your seats. My name is Don Ward. I'm with KKTV 11 News, and it's my pleasure and my honor to be here tonight to moderate this event. At 7:30 on the dot, we're going to be starting formally. That's when the broadcast will begin. This is being broadcast on my KKTV and also streamed live at Gazette.com and KKTV.com and through the UCCS website as well. There's just a couple of things that the organizers of tonight's event have asked me to go over. First of all, please double check that all your devices are on silent. I got to check mine too. Mine's plugged into the station so I can hear what's going on, but it could still ring. Okay. No placards or signs of any kind, please. We want to leave everyone's view unobstructed. Also, please, no flash photography. Our hope is that no one will leave during the debate itself once it starts, but if you do, the folks here will not let you back in, so please try to stay. It's 90 minutes. There will be no tolerance of disruptions. Security will escort you out, and you may face legal consequences. That's what we're saying. And the other thing, so we can get to as many questions and answers as possible, we're asking that you please hold your applause except for the opening statements that each candidate will be making and the closing statements that they make at the end. That way we can get all the questions asked and all the answers heard. I'll be explaining this once we start the live broadcast as well, but just a few minutes ago in one of the back rooms here, we had a random drawing of all four candidates to determine the positions at which they will sit, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the order in which they'll begin the opening statements. As we progress through the debate, though, with each and every question, the order will be mixed up in a way that does make sense on paper. It may seem a little strange, but we're trying to make all of the answers and the orders as different as possible so no one gets the advantage of going first more often, and so candidates don't always follow one another. And we also wanted to mention that the organizers of this debate, based on polls at the Gazette and at KKTV, determined that the leading four candidates in this election would be present and be invited to be part of this debate. We also want to let you know that Lawrence Martinez, another candidate who is on the ballot, is here tonight. If you want to have a word with him afterwards, he is in the room. And we'll begin, again, the televised portion at 7:30. And for now, I'm going to leave you to it, and we will be right back to get things started for real. So thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here, and we'll start very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about 4 minutes away now from beginning. So at this point, I'd like to bring our candidates to the stage and thank them so much for being here. In the drawing, the number 1 position, John Suthers. The number 2 position, Joel Miller. The number 3 position, Mary Lou Makepeace. The number 4 position, Amy Lathan. We can go ahead and applaud now to welcome our candidates. Just a couple of minutes now. I'm being told 3 minutes. This is exciting, isn't it? Trying to build the drama here. Everybody have everything you need?
Yep, we're good.
Yes. Two minutes.
The paint is almost dry.
I know. Better early than late, right? One minute. What are you going to do with your minute? I'm going to stand here. Thirty seconds. We'll be starting very soon now. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. I'm Don Ward from KKTV 11 News. Welcome to the campus of the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs for tonight's debate for mayor of Colorado Springs between the leading candidates in that race. I'll be serving as your moderator tonight for the debate, and we begin tonight with a welcome from our host, UCCS Chancellor Pamela Shockley-Zalabak.
Thank you, Don, and welcome to all of you. UCCS is proud to be hosting this important event for our city tonight, because obviously discussing the issues that we all face and looking at the positions and the choices we have to make in a very short period of time is what our democracy is all about. I would also like to thank our partners for tonight, the Gazette, KKTV, the Regional Leaders Forum, UCCS School of Public Affairs, UCCS Student Government Association, the Downtown Partnership, Colorado Springs Leadership Institute, the Colorado Springs Business Journal, and The Independent. And now it is my pleasure to welcome to the podium Dan Stever, publisher of the Colorado Springs Gazette.
Thank you, Pam. I'd like just to take a second to recognize the Chancellor this week being named on the front page of the Gazette Humanitarian of the Year by the Pikes Peak chapter of the American Red Cross. Have you all felt the energy that's being created in the last few months in our community around these important elections that are going to happen in the next few weeks? We sure have. Citizens have come out in droves to go to debates, forums, fireside chats hosted by the community and the candidates. They have joined the candidates of their choice campaigns to help. They have written letters to the editor. They've agreed to be videotaped and put on the web, voicing their concerns and questions about the future of the city. And they've even agreed to be featured in stories in the Gazette about what they hope for the future of the city. The energy is palpable. And then there's the candidates. We have a large, diverse group of candidates for all these positions, talented people who have stepped forward to volunteer, to contribute their time and talents to help move our city forward. This is how positive change can happen in a community, and we are very excited about this season. And on behalf of the media sponsors, KKTV, who's airing this live tonight, the Colorado Springs Business Journal, the Colorado Springs Independent, and for the Gazette, we are proud and pleased to be a part of this process. Thank you, and Don, let's get this show on the road.
All right. First, we begin with an opening statement from each of the candidates, beginning with candidate number 1, Mr. Suthers. Each candidate will have 90 seconds.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm running for mayor of Colorado Springs because I love this city and because I believe that over the course of my career, I've developed some leadership capabilities that can be of great benefit to this city as we go through the next several years. I literally grew up with Colorado Springs. I've watched it grow from 40,000 to 460,000 people, the 41st largest city in America. Look around you, folks. Big cities either grow economically or they stagnate. Which way are we going to go? It's up to all of us to determine that, and I think the next couple of years are a tipping point. Our city has major challenges. For 15 years, Colorado Springs has lagged significantly behind the rest of the state of Colorado in employment rates and new job creation. And over that same period of time, we've let our public infrastructure, including our roads and our stormwater systems, deteriorate significantly. And yet, over the last several years, we had a divisive political environment at City Hall that's simply not been conducive to economic and community development. That has to change. We've got to confront and resolve these challenges. I'm running for mayor because I believe I have the knowledge, the experience, the collaborative leadership style, and the passion to change the politics at City Hall, to begin to invest in our critical infrastructure, and to aggressively pursue new job creation. I'm asking all of you to join me in this effort. Thank you.
Go ahead, let's applaud the opening statement. Mr. Miller, 90 seconds.
I have the courage and the stamina to change the focus of government from meeting the needs of special interest groups and returning it to meeting the needs of citizens so we can get our roads repaired and our infrastructure fixed. I also have the experience and the knowledge of city government to implement that transition. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 44 years old. I'm a distinguished graduate from the Air Force Academy. I have degrees in astronautical and mechanical engineering, and I served our military for over 21 years. My wife Anita and I have been married for almost 23 years, and we have 4 children. I served on City Council, on the Utilities Board, and on the Utilities Board Finance Committee as the chair overseeing a $1 billion budget. I was the vice chair of the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority Board and vice chair of the Airport Advisory Commission. My platform is one of limited government. On the city level, that means providing police and fire protection, maintaining our infrastructure and parks, and creating an environment in which the free market can flourish. Beyond those core roles, government should stay out of our wallets. I will not spend a dime of your money on City for Champions. Detailed plans presented to the state have us spending $200 million on local taxes and fees on a downtown stadium and another $130 million for infrastructure related to a downtown museum. This is unacceptable. And we don't need an additional stormwater tax or fee. We need a disciplined government. My platform details are on my website at joelmillerformayor.com. I have action plans and details on issues. And together, I believe we can make Colorado Springs a better place to live, work, play, and do business. I appreciate your vote.
Ms. Makepeace, 90 seconds.
Well, good evening. Thanks for being here. I'm curious, how many students are in the audience? Would you raise your hand? Would you be so kind? Wow. That's awesome. You know, sometimes people think that young people don't care about politics, particularly local politics. I find that, as an instructor out here, to be absolutely a myth. I find that my students are very engaged in current events. So, good for you. And I feel like I'm an alum of UCCS. I got my master's in public administration here. And now I'm an instructor in the political science department, teaching state and local government and urban politics and women in politics. And I just want to say to you students, you are getting a great education. Never doubt that. This is a wonderful school. I want to thank our sponsors this evening, and especially Dr. Shockley Zelovec. Thank you. I'm running for mayor because like many of you, I've been very concerned about what's going on in our community, or what's not going on. Our economic, we haven't had any growth in the economy. We still continue to get people here because it's such a lovely place, but of course we're struggling to find the kinds of jobs that people need and want. I was mayor earlier. I was on city council for 12 years. I served as 6 years as the mayor after Bob Isaac resigned. And I am the only candidate running for mayor who has any municipal experience. And I think experience is so critical. We're at a very important juncture in Colorado Springs.
It's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lathan, 90 seconds.
Thank you very much, folks. Thanks for taking the time. This is such an extraordinarily important election for the leadership of this city and for the way we need to move forward. We have a lot going on, obviously, with city council, with mayoral candidates, and I appreciate your attention to these issues. I have been a county commissioner in this community for over 7 years. I've lived here for over 30 years, raising my family, graduated here, my husband graduated here, my daughter is attending here. We are a huge part of this community and love what we have here. When I was asked to run for this office, I was asked and began a conversation talking about the kinds of things that I do day in and day out right here at the local level in your local government. The things that deal with leadership, advocacy of this city, service delivery, and the things that impact business day in and day out for them. When capitalists come along and take a risk to put up a storefront, to open a business, to hire people, we need to be looking at local government from the perspective of what they need and what they are going through in order to open that business, in order to expand that business. How are we impacting them? How are we impacting them negatively or positively? And that's what we need to be focused on so we can move this economy forward. That's why I have an entire platform of how we will move business forward, and it's not theory. We've been doing this for years, and I know that these systems can work. And so I'm very excited to be part of this dialogue. AmyLathanForMayor.com is where you'll find that platform, and I really look forward to your vote. Thank you very much.
Next, we have a series of questions coming from community members and community leaders, and they have been pre-recorded on videotape, so take a look at the screen behind me. And number one is coming from a UCCS graduate student.
Currently, the city is projected to have a 2.8% increase in expenditures and only a 2% increase in revenues. If elected, what will be your goal or your mission to combat or even reverse this negative trend?
We begin the answers at 1 minute each with candidate number 2, Mr. Miller.
Okay, first of all, if you look at the actual revenues of 2014, our growth was well over 2%. In fact, we may be looking at a Tabor refund or a vote to allow the city to keep it. So that said, there is a concern, and our expenses are going up. There are certain things that are within our control on those expenses, and there are certain things that are out of our control. What we need to do is lasso the ones we do have control on. For example, we don't need to spend $2 million on outside counsel when we have 30 lawyers for our city attorney's office. We need to stop paying $2 million a year, or $2 million in severance pay. We need to stop doing studies to help certain special interest groups move their agenda forward. We need to focus on the core roles of government. That is how we can cut the growth of our expenditures over the things we do have control of. On the revenue side, we need to work with the business community. This is something the city has not done, in creating an environment in which the free market can flourish.
It's time. Thank you. Ms. Makepeace.
It was abrupt.
Sorry. Unintendedly so. It's okay.
Well, as I see it, there are three things that we can do. We can cut services, as was tried a few years ago. It didn't turn out to be very popular. We can increase taxes, or we can grow the pie. And personally, I think we need to work on growing the pie, bringing in businesses that provide good jobs. I know that we have tried very hard, that the business community has tried to diversify our economy. I think we need to work harder, and we need to work together to accomplish this. I think we need to look to businesses that demonstrate future growth, such as cybersecurity, the kinds of businesses where we have talent in the community with the military and the civilian contractors, people who have the knowledge. Maybe they desire to start a business, but we have talent, and not everybody can say that. And I think that's the best way to deal with our financial situation. That's not to say we might need to make some cuts and rearrange some things, but you know, as long as I've been involved in government, we've been talking about we need to tighten our belts. Well, we've been tightening it for 20 years, and I just don't think we can get there without doing something more drastic. Commissioner
Lathan.
Thanks. This is a question about expenses and revenue, and I think that we need to start with what we can control. And so this goes right to the heart of what we need to be doing in our budget and in our systems. Operational review, operational savings. You're going to hear me talk about looking at things from a regional perspective over and over again. Save money on fleet, shared resources, information technology, public works, the kinds of things where we can find the redundancies that exist, and they do exist, and then find ways to whittle those down and work together in ways that we haven't done in years. These are the kinds of things that impact that operational budget, and that's where we really need to find the money. We need to be looking into some new and exciting ideas to deliver those services. We can do this. We've been able to really pare this down without cutting the services, and we need to be looking at the operational savings from a regional perspective.
Mr. Suthers.
I have no doubt that we can get enough revenue in the regular course of business to meet the day-to-day operations of the city. The problem, folks, is how we're going to deal with this huge infrastructure backlog. And if I'm elected your mayor, we're going to spend the first several months working with the city council, with public discussions, talking about what our most optimistic revenue projections are, what our absolute priority critical infrastructure projects that have to be done in the next 5 to 10 years are, determine what the gap, if any, is, and then ask the people of Colorado Springs, how do you want to deal with it? Do you want to ignore it? Do you want to do bonded indebtedness? Do you want to do a half-cent sales tax for 10 years that's dedicated to that backlog? Do you want to do a property tax that's dedicated to that backlog? But ultimately, you, the people of Colorado Springs, are going to decide whether you do any of those options, because that's how things operate in Colorado and in Colorado Springs. And I think it's a discussion that we have to have and is going to take place very quickly if I'm the mayor of Colorado Springs.
Thank you. The next question is from a representative of a group of Gazette readers.
Candidates have talked about the need to restore trust in local government. What is your strategy or step-by-step plan to rebuild the community's trust?
We begin with candidate 3, Ms. Makepeace.
You know, these complex questions that you get a minute and a half to answer. Trust is a big issue. I think that the trust in local government and city government is at an all-time low. And trying to restore trust will be a major effort of whomever is elected mayor. I know that we will be watched closely, carefully for any misstep that looks like there are special deals, that there are insiders versus outsiders. I think the best way to restore trust is to be honest, to be straightforward, to be totally open, no more secret meetings, no more special deals. When there are requests for information, the information is freely given, and that all the meetings are open and you are welcome to attend, because transparency will be the only way that we can hope to restore trust in local government. And I believe it will take some time.
Commissioner Lathan.
Sure, this is huge. This is where it all begins. And so we're going to open the doors of city government. And I mean that a little bit figuratively and literally, because they're locked and very difficult to access people at the city. Very difficult. And that's not right. This is your public government. So we open the doors. We start talking to people openly. We bring in citizens to drive policy. We make sure that as the city government, we are supporting the citizens and their policy instead of dictating those. So we start talking about things. We enact a citizens budget oversight committee where citizens come in and look at everything that we're spending and help us rank those things. This has moved our budgeting practices regionally forward extraordinarily well, where we go into 5 years of budgeting openly with the citizens. We bring citizens into departments and start having them look at those things, and we do it openly. We answer the questions. We're honest about things. We answer the media's questions when they ask, and we're there to be accessible and to provide the information that people need.
Mr. Suthers.
Restoring trust begins with candid conversation between the mayor and the council, eye-to-eye communication. Restoring trust with the public is communication with the public, total complete candor about what the needs of the city are. You know, the pie charts and the whole thing. We have to have communication as to what the needs of the city are. And when it's time to go to the voters, total complete candor in the initiative. None of this kind of tricky stuff we've seen in the past where we don't ask the question very directly, hoping some people will be confused by it. You got to be absolutely clear about what the issue is, and it's got to be as simple as possible so that everybody can understand it. That's the path towards beginning to restore trust with the public. There's just no substitute for candid communication on all levels.
Mr. Miller.
There are 3 methods that we need to restore trust, and it's a very critical issue, because if you don't have trust, the whole basis of our government is that we're by the people, for the people, and of the people, and without that trust, that whole premise disappears. So the first thing is transparency. I will work with the IT department and our finance office to publish not only the budget, but how we're doing on the budget real time. If there's an expense going out the door for the city, the citizens should be able to see and look at it and see how is that going against a line item of our budget. Right now, we wait for 6 months at the end of the year to see a financial report. That's unacceptable. We need to revamp the CORA process, the Open Records Act process, and take the communications department out of it so that it's not a PR issue. We need to not avoid the public. I can't tell you how many times in the course of the year and a half on council, people wanted to have meetings with just 2 council members so that there wasn't a public notice required to have the public there. There's nothing that we need to hide from the public on. I fought hard to have the Urban Renewal Authority, which will be the financing arm for hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money, to have their meetings videotaped, and still, to this day, they fought tooth and nail, and we can't do it.
Thank you very much. Question number 3 comes to us now from an organization called Regional Leaders Forum.
This summer, regional leaders will take their 7th trip to visit another successful city to learn their best practices. One of the common themes we have discovered in all 6 cities has been the collaborative spirit and unified vision. What specific steps will you take to create this same environment in our community?
We begin this round of 1-minute answers with candidate 4, Commissioner Lathan.
Thank you. The regional leaders' trips have been extraordinary, and I can look at a number of people in this room with whom I have traveled on many of those trips and learned a number of practices. And we bring things back, and you know they learned from us as well. And we learn things about ourselves, and we talk about how the systems are working for us as well. We have learned that here's the way they work regionally. They present something regionally focused projects, the budget that they have to other entities, and they're able to leverage more money and resources into their community. That means something, and when we bring that home right here, we are told by CDOT, for example, you come to us with one project, maybe 2, and we'll fund it because we've changed our funding strategies. And when we talk about bringing money into this community for our transportation infrastructure, we have to be regional on the same page. Same things happen at the federal level when we leverage some of those dollars into this community. So we have got to be very specific with the groups that we're working with business, to be able to put those projects together.
Mr. Suthers.
If I'm fortunate to become the mayor of Colorado Springs, you're going to see a whole new level of collaboration in terms of what transpires within the city of Colorado Springs and regionally. I will collaborate with the council, face-to-face communication, not nasty emails with copies to the press. I know that may be of disappointment to the press, but it's going to be a whole different means of communicating. And as mayor, I'm going to meet regularly with the county commissioners, regularly with the mayor of Fountain and the city council, Manitou Springs, Palmer Lake, all the municipalities in the vicinity to address this whole issue of collaboration. What can we do regionally? What can we accomplish? What should we do in law enforcement, emergency management, IT, all that sort of thing. That will be, you know, part of the DNA of my leadership.
Mr. Miller.
Well, when you talk about the word collaboration, you have to use it in context. With whom are you collaborating and to what end? A lot of times it's very good to collaborate. There are certain things that are not good to collaborate. If you're collaborating, which will be to the detriment of individual freedoms guaranteed in our Constitution, that's a problem. I will not be collaborating to do that, whether it's property rights, whether it's Second Amendment, whether it's your First Amendment freedom of speech. But there are plenty of opportunities to collaborate in the right way. The business community, for one. We had a recent announcement of a company coming to Colorado Springs, and it was there was some collaboration, but instead of having this room full of people addressing business concerns, not only the businesses themselves and not only the ones that belong to the Regional Business Alliance, but all of them in an industry sector, having the Economic Vitality Department, having all of City Council, yes, even if you have to notice the meeting to the public, having Pikes Peak Community College to address workforce issues, and then you go out and you can lock arms with the rest of the community and say, this is what we have to offer for you to grow your business here or to bring your business here to Colorado Springs.
It's time. Thank you. Ms. Makepeace.
Well, collaboration begins with respect. We have to respect one another and one another's roles. So, of course, collaboration between the mayor and the council, you'll hear that from all of us because it's an absolute critical thing that has to happen. But I would stand with the new ED of the Regional Building Alliance. We would have to develop with council, with utilities, plans on how we're going to go about invigorating our economy. Communication, respect, working together, having a relationship beyond a confrontational meeting is critical. But it takes two to tango, as they say. And so the mayor can't be the only collaborator. It has to be other parties have to have that same open perspective for us to work together. You may be surprised to learn that there are 3 strategic plans within the city. One for the city, one for the mayor, one for the utilities. And they're different. So how can we, I'll finish later.
Mr. Suthers.
I've already answered that.
What about?
Excuse me. Next question. This is another video question. This one comes from Downtown Partnership.
With a growing aging population, some of whom don't drive, plus an exploding younger population demanding transportation options, how will you ensure our transit meets the needs of diverse citizens, as well as ensuring a city that's more bikeable and walkable and accessible for all?
We'll begin this time with candidate 2, Mr. Miller.
I've been all over the world in my career, in both the Air Force and as an internationally qualified airline pilot. And every week I'm riding public transportation somewhere if I want to get anywhere on a layover. I think Colorado Springs is a sprawled city. We hear that a lot, but that's because the market drove us that way. Everybody wants a piece of their property. We are not going to reach every extent of the city, but what we can do is we can look at the route structure and we can see what is the most efficient way to meet the most number of people and their needs where they have to go. Does that mean downsizing, maybe having smaller shuttle bus sizes, and rather than having a large bus that's 1/3 full? Maybe. We need to look at all those options for making efficiency changes to the dollars that we do have to spend. We also need to partner with the private sector, whether it's UCCS or Pikes Peak Community College, whether it's the hospitals that need to get people to their appointments, or whether it's large employers that need to get workers to work. And figure out how can we partner with them, maybe financially, maybe to partner for federal grants or other ways that we can work together.
It's time. We'll go back now to Mr. Suthers.
62% of our transit riders in Colorado Springs are what we call have to. 40% of them, that's the only way they can get to work. They don't have alternative transportation. 22%, that's the only way they get to school. We've got to do a better job of frequency and routes that allow them to get where they need to go. And we have to make it more attractive for discretionary riders. That happens, of course, when it becomes too expensive to park downtown and people want to use that sort of thing, and that's part of the process of urbanization. But the first thing we have to do, folks, is recommit the city's $5.8 million that they said at the time we set up PPRTA, that would be their maintenance of effort. As of now, we've only gotten back up to 4. $1.8 million is a significant number of new routes. Finally, we have to develop some partners. A lot of these kids are coming to UCCS. A lot of the kids are coming to Pikes Peak Community College. We got to ask those institutions to perhaps partner with us to make transportation more available.
Commissioner Lathan.
Thank you. The transit issue obviously is a huge issue, not only for the people who depend on transit, but also for that competitive edge within a community. We hear all the time about the young workforce and what do they want in a community, the walkability, the livability, all of those things, the accessibility, and so this is a huge issue for them. The maintenance of effort at the city is not aspirational. It was a promise that was made when you voted on the PPRTA, and that needs to be brought back up to the level that was promised. We also need to look at the ways that we can partner, as has been said, with some of the other partners that exist here and other ways that we can bring institutions in who can drive riders into this. But we do have to look at this from a choice ridership issue, because you have to drive choice riders in order to increase the number of routes. You have to improve the transfer times in order to get the choice riders, and then that supports many of the people who depend on the system. All of that drives the system up and drives the resources that are available for the system. We are looking at all of those things right now and how we are able to drive those choice riders into that system and change those transfer times.
Ms. Makepeace.
Well, I confess I have a car, and I can pretty much drive wherever I want to go. And so it was probably the biggest surprise of this campaign to find out, to hear how widespread the desire is for a better transit system. It seems that we have a transit system that goes all over town, but it really doesn't serve anyone efficiently when you have an hour wait between each time the bus comes around. We have young professionals who don't want to own a car. We have seniors who have had, for whatever reason, give up driving. We have people with disabilities. We have employers who need their workers to get to work. And we have those employees who say, I can only be an hour late for work once. If I miss that bus, I don't have a job. I think it's time to look at a regional transit authority, getting buses out to, we already provide service to Fountain and to Manitou Springs. I think it's time to sit down and really examine, do we truly want a good bus service, or do we just not want to spend that money? We won't know that until we have some frank discussion going on in this community.
Thank you, candidate. The next question, another video question, is from Colorado Springs Leadership Institute.
The university is providing great opportunities for economic growth and producing young talent for the region. What specific actions will you take to leverage that opportunity?
We begin this round of answers with Mr. Suthers.
First of all, this place that we're sitting right now, UCCS, is one of the great gems of Colorado Springs right now. I talked about the economic lag we've been in. Have you noticed that all the cranes in Colorado Springs are in a mile circumference of where we are right now? I think the role that the mayor plays is to sit down with the educational institutions. We have 40,000 higher ed students, and of course we have lots of high school students, and the mayor facilitates discussions between the business community and the educational institutions as to what the workforce needs are. Workforce is a huge issue, folks. There's people, and I see them in the audience now, that say, I can't find welders, I can't find technical people in this town. We got to make sure that the high schools and the trade schools know what's needed, and the higher education institutions know what's needed by our business community.
We'll go to Commissioner Lathan.
This is a long-term business ecosystem development process where we have to be working with our universities and our businesses that are here, kind of those niche businesses. Where do we need the kinds of things that a university may not have enough capacity to fill? What about training tax incentives and things that we can do to be able to provide the workforce? Because ultimately, when we sit down, and we do this right now, when we sit down with local employers who want to expand and talk about what their needs are, it is the number one thing that they talk about, their workforce. When we talk about primary employers from outside of the community, this is what they talk about, the workforce, what's there. When you go to the workforce, what do you need in a community? The number one thing they need is a job. So that's what brings them here, but they also want all of the other issues. How do we make sure that we are able to provide the kind of workforce that we are trying to attract? That workforce supply chain and the technical supply chain that's necessary has to be in place before we can go out and bring in that kind of expansion and those kind of primary employers. That's communication with the universities as well.
Ms. Makepeace.
Well, we obviously have a disconnect. If we have all these young people looking for jobs and we have all these employers who say they can't find employees, something is amiss. And so if it's people getting the wrong, taking the wrong majors or having the wrong idea about what's a good job, I'm not quite sure what that is. To me, the bottom line is we need more employers. We need a variety of employers. We need, as I said, cybersecurity. I think we should focus on that. But we also, maybe we need some look at bicycling, which is a growing phenomenon in cities across America, that we would invite and encourage people who build or repair or manufacture bicycles and bicycle parts. We need to have an array of jobs to offer the whole community, not just young people, but certainly young people. And that's part of growing the pie that I talked about before. We really have to pay attention and work hard to attract a variety of employers here.
Mr. Miller.
I think one of the ways we can leverage it is we can have graduates of this institution staying here, whether that means finding a job or whether that means starting their own business. In either case, I think the government has a role to play, creating that environment where a business, this is a good place to start a business. So we get rid of extra business taxation, extra obstacles to doing business, and that will satisfy both problems, creating jobs and making it easier to start a business here. I have several nieces and nephews, and when they've decided where they're going to live, there is one primary factor. Where can they get a job? I have a nephew graduating from Stanford, and he's deciding between two cities. Guess why? Because those are the two places he found a job. So we need to continue to work with that. We also need to work with our alumni community. And my class, and from the Air Force Academy, we need to be going and speaking to these alumni groups that are coming back for reunions. They're running businesses. They are the CEOs of businesses. We should be leveraging the graduates that we have in that community.
Sorry. It's so nice to have so many students here tonight, and our next video question is from a UCCS student.
If elected as mayor, how do you plan to strengthen Colorado Springs' intergovernmental relationship with the state, federal government, and other local governments?
And we begin with candidate 4, Commissioner Lathan.
Again, this goes to that kind of regional approach, not only right here in our own communities, but throughout the state. I've been in the in the governor's office, with CDOT officials, with federal officials, talking about not only the ways that we leverage money from them that we are already paying and that we need to bring into our infrastructure in this community, but the kinds of legislative things that impact us at the local level. This is local government, and these kinds of things that happen at the state and at the federal level matter to us here. So you constantly communicate, you engage, you go to the hearings, you work with them, you have those relationships so that you are able to stand up and say, this is going to really chill economic investment in this community, and here's why. And when we have those relationships, when I'm able to pick up the phone and call those folks and say, this is really going to hurt us here, they listen, and we're able to have an impact on that. This has got to be about communication and advocacy out in the rest of those entities.
Ms. Makepeace.
Well, it's no secret that Colorado Springs has kind of a shaky reputation with the rest of the state, and I think that the mayor's primary job is to be an advocate and an ambassador or cheerleader for Colorado Springs, to tell others what a great place this is. I think that I have a number of connections around the state, but I think we start right here at home with this area. We used to have a mayor's monthly or quarterly meeting where we all sat down, all the mayors in this area, and talked about things that we had in common or things that we were working on or challenges, collaboration. And then going up to the state, certainly we want to have a good relationship with our governor. I don't have his telephone number in my speed dial, but I know him very well. I know that another important person, I think, to deal with is the head of CDOT. We want to make sure that we have our highways come up high on the priorities. It is about relationships, as Amy said. Getting to know people, meeting people, having positive relationships, and being able to tell positive messages about Colorado Springs.
Mr. Miller.
Well, I think I'll start with the local level. On the local level, we're part of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. Our current mayor, when he came in office, attempted to eliminate our membership of the PPACG, which brings us tens of millions of dollars of grant funding from the federal government every year. So I would restore that. City Council rescued the funding to keep us a member of PPACG. That is a city function. We need to start sending staff members to those meetings and making sure that the city is partnering with our other regional partners that are part of that organization. Same with the PPRT, the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. We need to have the city staff back there making sure that we are locking arms with our community partners, also making sure that we are staking our own ground as well. We have to make sure our own interests and that of our citizens is represented, so we need to do that. On the state level, our current mayor has secured a lobbyist for the city of Colorado Springs, but nobody knows what that lobbyist is lobbying for because there have been no meetings, no sharing of information with City Council, so we need to do that.
That's time. Mr. Suthers.
I think there is a perception and a reality that Colorado Springs has lacked a certain connectedness with the rest of the state of Colorado and on a national basis. And frankly, I think my 10 years as Colorado Attorney General makes me uniquely qualified to do a lot to correct that lack of connectedness. Mary Lou, I do have John Hickenlooper's cell phone on speed dial.
I've heard that.
And I saw him a couple weeks ago, and I told him that if the money doesn't start flowing to Colorado Springs, I'm going to call him at midnight every night. I have a very close relationship with the governor. He's been my client for 4 years. I have a close relationship with the Economic Development Commission. My office represented them. My office represented the Transportation Commission that determines where highway dollars go. I think it's incumbent upon the mayor to make sure that Colorado Springs is at the table when there's any availability of federal or state funds, and I'm going to do that. I'll help the businesses in Colorado Springs with their application for economic development grants. I'll make sure that we're at the table when
That's time.
HUD.
Sorry. Thank you very much, candidates. We have another question now, a video question from a group of Gazette readers.
There are people in business groups, nonprofit groups, and neighborhood groups who have said that the political environment has stymied economic development. What would you do to change the political environment?
We begin this one with candidate 3, Ms. Makepeace.
Well, I think we've all fundamentally answered that, and that is changing the climate means that the council and the mayor figure out how to work together. Now, I have a very different personality and a very different management style than our current mayor, and I work to find common ground. I work out of respect and out of close communication with people. So I've met with a number of the council members. They say, you know, we're just as guilty as the mayor. We weren't exactly above board on a lot of stuff. We want to start over, and we will work with you, Mary Lou. I'm very encouraged with a number of the candidates who are running for council. They seem open and agreeable, and I look forward to working with them because, you know, if we don't work together, it's kind of like when we had the stormwater question come before the voters. When the council has one position and the mayor has another position, we're not going to move ahead because people are like, what is going on? They can't even agree. So the number one step to improving the political climate is going to be having a collaborative relationship between those two entities.
Mr. Miller.
First of all, I would differ with the fact that it's the political environment that is stymieing business. I think it stymies some business. For some businesses, the political environment's been very good, particularly to large donors of campaigns. And I think that's a real problem, and in the perception, even the perception is a problem here. Because if you have a problem with something that's obstructing business, for example, building multifamily residential downtown, we had this actually happen. You have one developer wanting to do this, comes forward, the city staff comes forward to offer a waiver to the current system, and then somebody 2 blocks away is not offered the same waiver. That is what stymies business. This spirit of cronyism and special interest kowtowing, we need to even the playing field and make business available and the free market environment available to everybody who wants to come and do business here. And that's how you bring business, because it doesn't take long to research the fact that we have a cronyism problem in Colorado Springs.
Mr. Suthers.
I've made a career out of dealing with people that disagree with me. I mean, to a large extent, that's all I've done all my life. And folks, it's hard work to sit down and communicate with folks, say, here's where we agree, here's where we disagree, let's capitalize on our points of agreement and move forward. But it can be done. It hasn't been done over the last several years. There's been very little personal communication between the council and the mayor. There's been virtually no communication between the mayor and, as indicated, boards and commissions that are regional, county commissioners and things like that. This is a process of just doing the hard work of communicating, and I have every bit of confidence that very quickly we will change the political climate if I'm the mayor and working with a different council and working with the community as a whole.
Commissioner Lathan.
Wow, the political environment, we've all talked about it. We all know that it's an issue. I'm going to move the mayor's office into City Hall from the city administration building so that the mayor is there with city council working together, talking together. It seems like very simple, low-hanging fruit, but it goes to respect and communication and people working professionally together. City council should be able to pick up the phone and call any member of city staff at any time with any question and not be told that they can't communicate with one another. That's ridiculous. That's embarrassing to a city, and it gets out there into the business community. It is causing problems within the business community because businesses and their investors look for consistency and reliability in the process. And they know that when all of the bickering and all of the infighting is impacting whether or not they're able to get through the process, that's going to impact the bottom line. All of a sudden, as you got a project, you're thousands of dollars down the road after changes have been made with all the uncertainty. We've got to be certain, we've got to be stable, we've got to be reliable, and I'm going to work together with council to do that.
We close this round with a final video question from the Regional Leaders Forum.
In a recent Gazette article, Colorado Springs was ranked as having the second worst recovery in the state since the economic downturn. What specific goals do you have in mind to turn our recovery around?
We begin with candidate 2, Mr. Miller.
I think I've alluded to some of this. There's more details on my website about it. But the thing we need to do is focus on the businesses that we have here. What are the sectors? Is there an IT sector? Certainly. Is it data storage? Is there manufacturing? And for example, let's take manufacturing. We sit down with local businesses, not just members of the Business Alliance, but ones who choose not to pay dues to the Business Alliance. We sit down with them. We sit with Colorado Springs Utilities. We figure out how we can address, we sit down with City Council again. If it needs to be a publicly noticed meeting, fine. We sit down with Pikes Peak Community College to talk about workforce. And we lock arms and we say, what are the top 10 problems that we have in this sector in the community? We know for manufacturing, the overseas manufacturing is returning to the United States. There's no reason we shouldn't be on the top of the list for returning companies. So we figure out what are those obstacles, what does Colorado Springs have to offer, what are the top 10 obstacles. We sit down and we farm off those issues, City Council, city staff, utilities, Pikes Peak Community College, and we work together and we provide a unified front as to what we have to offer to each sector in the business community.
Thank you. Mr. Southern.
We know that statistically speaking, 80 to 90% of new job creation is going to come from existing businesses. 10 to 20% is going to come from those that we're able to attract. So with that in mind, the mayor's got to be a facilitator to go to businesses that are currently here and say, what can we do to help you? One of the things they're going to say immediately is do something about the infrastructure. If you want my company to invest $400 or $500 million in expansion, I've got to see some commitment from the city to deal with stormwater and roads and bridges. But we also have to say, what else can we do for you in terms of helping you with economic development grants and things like that? And then, of course, we have to aggressively pursue companies that might be interested in Colorado Springs. I'm pretty optimistic. I see the economy turning a little bit, and while we've been lagging behind, I see some new interest in Colorado Springs, some excitement about the possibilities, and I'm confident that we will be able in the next several years to create a lot of new jobs in this community.
Commissioner Lathan.
Thanks. We lagged behind the downturn as well, and so we're kind of coming into it. We've got a lot of great things going on. But here's what we're going to do. We have got to eliminate the business personal property tax immediately. That is something that's very important to business, and we've been talking about that quite a bit now. A lot of people are now talking about it, and I'm excited about that going forward. We have to analyze our procurement processes and consolidate. Again, you're going to hear me talk about being regional, looking for the efficiencies of scale, looking for the redundancies that we have. We're going to reform our code enforcement, sustainability within our neighborhoods, the kind of stabilization within our neighborhoods that help with jobs within our neighborhoods, reform city planning. This is critical. Being able to have the kind of consistency that's needed for business is a competitive edge. And in the absence of us having big buckets of cash to compete out in the global business market to bring companies into this community, we have to compete with what we've got right in front of us. And that is a regulatory system that we can make better, less into their business, let all the different things that we can reform that and compete through that regulatory environment.
Ms. Makepeace.
Well, I think all of these are great ideas. I think we should do them all. And what I want us to become is known for our innovation. You know, everything in the world is changing so quickly, and that if we aren't looking into the future and trying to anticipate that future, we are going to be left behind no matter what we do. And so many places in our community are working on innovation. Many cities have innovation officers to really turbocharge their staff to think of new and creative ways of delivering services. We have some great things here in Colorado Springs. I know the university has an innovation program. I think Pikes Peak Community College does. CC does. I think what is happening with the train station is going to be a center for innovation. I love the epicentral where we have young entrepreneurs working. I love the work that Robin Roberts is doing with GIs, getting out of the service and working with them to be innovative entrepreneurs. So I think that we have to do some housekeeping, but we also have to think, think about the big picture and how we can lift Colorado Springs up to be unique and different and ready for the future.
Thank you very much, candidates. That wraps up the first round. We want to thank everyone who submitted those video questions. Thank you very much. We have a panel of media representatives here tonight for round two, and I'd like to first bring up a representative of the Colorado Springs Independent to ask the first question in this media question round.
I'm John Weiss with the Independent. This is a question. Who goes first? You decide. It's actually 4-3-2. Commissioner Latham. Do you believe with 97% of American scientists that human activities are making our climate significantly more volatile and dangerous? And second part, if you are elected, what, if any, specific steps would you advocate to reduce the City of Colorado Springs and CSU's carbon footprint?
Before we start, if I could just clarify, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each of the media questions, so this will be for all of them, so sorry.
Whew, 1 minute on global warming. There you go. No, I don't believe it's human-made. There is climate change. We can look at all of that. It exists in different ways, but I do not look at that from that human-caused regulatory standpoint that I think is changing the way we live our lives and the way business is run, and it's very, very, really obtrusive to business. Colorado Springs is doing an extraordinary job with our energy. The Drake power plant is in compliance with all of the EPA mandates, which are some of the most stringent mandates we've ever seen in history for that kind of a power plant. When you look at power in that way, we are doing an extraordinary job, and we're delivering power at an extraordinary rate. Again, serving our families and our businesses and being competitive at the same time. We obviously enjoy a number of conservation processes and things that we need to do together as a community, but this is not something that I believe should be regulated to the extent that I think that kind of whole global warming through humans and all the regulation that we need to have has taken the direction. I don't support those.
Ms. Makepeace.
Well, I do believe that human behavior has an impact on global warming. I can't deal with everything, but I think we can deal with some things in our own community, because I'd like to continue looking at Pikes Peak. I think it's pretty spectacular, and if we don't start making changes, either in the cars we drive, our children are not going to be able to see Pikes Peak. So I would say that the city fleet and buses should be electric or natural gas. I think that the power plant, they are in compliance at the moment, but there are new regulations coming down. We must always be in compliance there. But we should also be looking for ways to deliver green, renewable energy. And my hope, because again, looking to the future, what's out there that we might incorporate that would provide clean energy and still not be overly expensive. That's the challenge. I think we should be able to work, I think we should have a goal of working toward clean air and low cost. And that might be pie in the sky, but it's a worthy goal.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Well, I think these issues have to be had out at the federal level, for one. I would like to say that I think that the scientists should be allowed to do research on both sides of the issue. I'm not a climate expert, but I don't think we should be shouting out one side or the other. Bottom line is that we have regulations. Again, the Colorado Springs Utility is meeting the requirements of the Clean Air Act, and we're doing it in some innovative ways. We have technology that's being installed right now that hasn't been done at any other power plant. When it comes to green energy, we've got to ask ourselves the questions. How is this impacting business? How is this impacting people on fixed incomes if their utility rates increase by 30 or 40% to deliver green energy? Right now, coal is $22 a megawatt hour. Natural gas is $40. Solar is over $100. So, and it's come down significantly, and it will continue to come down. So utilities need to continue to look at that technology and see as it comes down and becomes more economical, how we can fit that into our infrastructure.
Mr. Suthers.
I think it's pretty clear that the current climate trend is one of warming. But that's, that's the simple part of the deal. What do you do about it? Most of it is going to be determined on the federal level. On a municipal level, our utilities is going to be very much a part of the debate. We're right in the middle of that right now in terms of electrical generation. What's our commitment to coal? What's our commitment to natural gas? It's all a balancing act. Cost factors, environmental factors. Some of this is going to be imposed upon us by EPA regulation. And getting out from under it is probably not something we're going to be able to accomplish. We want clean air, so to the extent that we can get cleaner buses, get those sorts of things as a community, as long as it's an appropriate cost investment, those are the types of decisions we're going to make. It's a balancing act, folks, but we want to do the best we can to have as good an environment as we possibly can at an affordable price.
The next media question comes to us from the Gazette.
Hello, Monica Mendoza from the Gazette. Almost right out of the chute, in the new council mayor form of government, the city attorney has been an issue. The city attorney is appointed by and directly reports to the mayor, but when there has been a clash in charter issues or budget issues or hiring processes, the council has said for 4 years that the city attorney gives opinions that represent the mayor's position and policy. And this has been a source of hours of public debate at City Hall, and I'm wondering, how will you solve this issue?
And we begin with Ms. Makepeace.
Well, I think that a lot of that was caused by hiring an attorney initially who didn't know anything about municipal government, and therefore offered some opinions that were at least unorthodox and got the mayor and the council into some controversies. I think that we have a pretty decent city attorney now. She's been there for some time. The worst thing we could do is to have an election and have an elected attorney. I think another worse thing would be for city council to have its own attorney, so that attorney could sue the mayor's attorney. I think what the best way to go about that is that the city council be able to hire an attorney who works for the city attorney, and that's what utilities has, an attorney who works for the city attorney, and there are different personalities, and I think it will work just fine. I think that was a personality issue as much as anything.
Mr. Miller.
Well, I'm the only candidate for mayor that has lived through this process. And this is a real problem. There is an inherent conflict of interest because what voters voted for when they approved the change of government to a council mayor form of government was that we would have an independent look, a system of checks and balances. And when you have a city attorney who is hired and fired by one of those branches and not the other, you obviously want to preserve your job. That's not saying anything about the ethics of the city attorney. But city council asks the city attorney for an opinion, and the draft is presented to the mayor and to the press before city council gets a look at the opinion. That's a problem. If the mayor hires outside counsel on an issue that the city has to decide about, like stadium authorities, and it's denied to city council, that's a problem. I have a full action plan on how I will deal with the city attorney's office. I do propose a charter change that the citizens would have to approve to make an independent, serving the citizens city attorney.
Mr. Suthers.
Folks, if you look at the top 100 cities in this country, 100 largest, you're going to find that the vast majority of them, the vast majority of them have the exact same system that we do, that the mayor appoints the city attorney. We did have kind of a perfect storm. We had a mayor that frankly didn't fully appreciate the proper role of the city attorney, and he chose a city attorney that didn't appreciate the proper role of the city attorney, and it was a bad scene. If I'm elected mayor, I have considerable experience in the proper role of government attorneys, and I can tell you within a couple of months this will be not a big issue. The council should have a dedicated attorney in the city attorney's office that they trust and can give advice to. But the last thing we need is dueling attorneys and people threatening to sue each other. I'll tell you the very last thing we need to do is an elected attorney that creates a new political power base.
Commissioner Lake.
Thank you. This is a hot topic as well. In local government, we deal with this all the time, where we have attorneys who represent other elected offices, and how do we balance that? How do we make sure that we are not having attorneys who are digging into policy? That is what's critical. We have got to have attorneys who do not deliver policy statements, but deliver legal opinions, so that when we come up with ideas, whether it's the mayor's office or city council, they are given legal counsel based on the merit of those ideas and those issues going forward, and not having attorneys digging into policy. I do not support city council having their own separate attorney. It will create just another battle and another war, another opportunity for that kind of infighting. But city council needs to have access to true, pure legal counsel, and not policy driven by the mayor's office or any other entity within the city. So this can be done through the policies that exist within the city to make sure that we're getting true legal counsel and that we're working together. And all of those opinions need to be shared with both the mayor's office and city council.
Thank you, candidates. Question 3 from our media panel comes from the Colorado Springs Business Journal.
John Hazelhurst from the Colorado Springs Business Journal. We've talked a lot about the future, and Mr. Suthers has correctly observed that Colorado Springs has lagged behind the rest of the municipalities in the state, or many of them, for the last 15 years. Do you think that there are structural, cultural, or political problems that are inherent to the city and will make it very difficult to move forward in the future?
And we begin with Mr. Miller.
I think the question was whether there are structural, cultural, or political obstacles to moving us forward. And I think the answer is yes, all 3 of them. But I think there are things that with the right people in the mayor's office can be overcome. Structurally, we have to have a system that respects the checks and balances and the role of government, and that works together to remove the obstacles for business. Politically, we need to have citizens that are focused on researching candidates and making sure that they are free market candidates, that they are going to be supporting the free enterprise and fair competition and an even playing field. Culturally, I believe we already have a system where we respect liberty and we respect the free market. We have a huge population of military here that are swearing to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I think that that is not an obstacle as much as it is a benefit. And then we need to capitalize on that. And I think that we can move forward. But it's going to take discipline. It's going to overcome what we have ingrained here to hang the sign on the door of Colorado Springs that says we're open for business, not just the right people.
Mr. Suthers.
One of the things that other areas of Colorado have had that's been an advantage in this last 15 years that Colorado Springs has not had is a natural resource issue. We haven't had the benefit of energy development like a lot of the other state has, and that's been a big part of some of their advantages. But John, I don't think that there are structural or cultural barriers. I sense, knowing where you're coming from, you may be suggesting that because the community is so politically conservative that that's somehow a barrier. I don't see that. I think culturally, this is a very diverse community. The private sector supports culture. We can move forward. We do have to be diverse. We have to be open. I think our biggest problem has been political. I said in my opening statement, the political climate in Colorado Springs has simply not been conducive to economic development, and this is what we're all here about today, is to change that. And we're all up here committed to change that, and I think it's going to happen. So I'm optimistic in terms of us moving forward and beginning to create the momentum for economic development.
Thank you, Commissioner Lathan.
I don't think that there's a structural problem within city government. We're talking about city government, and so I think we've got the right structure in place. We have had the personality issues and some of these issues that are going to change. We are going to move the needle on these issues. There's not one person up here who can change the political dynamic, the political tendencies of an entire community. That's our community. That's who we are. And we have diversity of political thought in this community. What we have to do is listen and be able to work with the community and open up that dialogue within the community. But I won't sit here and say we need to change the people in the community. These are the people. We are all the people of this community, and we do have diverse thought, and we need to work together. The political infighting, we have to change that immediately. That's what we're all talking about. We have to be functional. City government needs to be invisible and supportive of business and our core infrastructure so that we can all do what we need to do, supported by local government. But local government isn't here to change the culture of a community.
Ms. Makepeace.
Well, it's an interesting question, John. I think that we do have some impediments to moving forward, but only if we keep doing the same thing. You know, what is the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? Well, I mean, we can continue with these bad habits that we have developed, but I think, again, moving forward, we know that the way we have thought about some things, the way we have acted about some things, just aren't working. So it's not just the people up here or the one of us that's going to be the mayor. It is going to be everyone. Hold the mayor accountable. Hold the city council accountable. Hold the business community accountable. Unless we all get together, we're, I don't want to say we're doomed, but we're not going to do anything different than what we've been doing. So I don't think it's impossible. I just think it takes a concerted effort on everyone's part to be more positive, more collaborative, and move forward.
The final question from our media panel is from the UCCS student newspaper, The Scribe.
Jonathan Toman, editor of The Scribe. In many ways, Colorado Springs is an aging city. If elected, what specific changes would you implement to help young people stay in town?
We begin with Mr. Suthers.
Folks, it all begins with jobs. One of the things that is sad to me is things have changed. When my wife and I fell in love in Colorado Springs and got married and wanted to stay here, she found a great job with Hewlett-Packard. I found a great job. I see so many young people now can't find a job in Colorado Springs that meets their educational attainment and their capabilities and go to Denver or elsewhere. It all starts with attracting the types of companies here and cultivating the companies that are already here that are going to employ these young people. What's going on with the Catalyst campus downtown is a perfect example. Those are going to be young people that are going to be in our community. They're going to need living arrangements. They're going to want to live close to work. They're going to want amenities like the Legacy Loop that we can develop around downtown for biking purposes and all that sort of thing. The role of the city is to help the businesses create the jobs, create the private sector will develop the amenities, and the city can help to develop the public amenities like bike trails and things like that.
Commissioner Lathan.
Millennials are flocking to city centers, and so this is why the talk about the streamlining of city planning and the kinds of new things that we need to do to attract businesses and young people is so critical. Cultural attractions, employment opportunities, obviously across the board, shared spaces, working spaces and co-locating spaces that are very popular, and there's a lot of synergy that exists there. Increased and enhanced technology. I've got a whole list of all of these things that we need to be doing in the downtown core and throughout our community. Arts and entertainment districts, dining districts. We have legislation that we can grab a hold of right now that exists that allows for more development and more diverse development easier without all of the bureaucracy that's involved in it. Infill incentives, things that really matter to some of the areas that are blighted and that are in the downtown core. And I'm going to say it again, streamlining city planning and making it consistent for business.
Ms. Makepeace.
Well, it's true that we have a growing senior population, but we do have a growing YP, as they call themselves, young professionals. But they have concerns about this community. And when I talk to them, housing is a concern. They'd like to see more housing options, especially in the downtown area. They would like to see a better transit system, and because they want to ride their bikes and they want to take a bus and not pay for a car. John Hazelhurst captured one of their concerns in a column, I'm sorry I keep hitting that, a column a few weeks ago where he talked about the pale, male, and stale leadership of our community. And they also don't like the reputation that we have for being an intolerant community. And yes, they want a job, but it's a package that they don't like about Colorado Springs. And you know what? They're not alone. When I talk to seniors, they have many of the same concerns. So I think those are things that we need to work on for the good of all of us, not just the young population. You just kind of raised it to a level that we need to pay attention to it.
Mr. Miller.
Well, what I don't advocate doing is having a bunch of 60 and 70-year-olds figuring out what these youngsters want and then spending taxpayer dollars to do it. Because what the youngsters want is a job. And I mentioned this before. I have 5 or 6 nephews right now graduating in the same position from as diverse locations as Miami to Palo Alto. And the number one decision that they are, factor they are basing their decision on where to move is where they can find a job. So again, that needs to be the focus and the rest will fall into place. Now, are there things that we can do that may be more fun? Well, when they start to come because there are better jobs here, guess what? The free market is going to dictate, wow, we can figure out with the free market what millennials want once they can find a job, and now they're choosing based on that secondary factor, what is the fun factor in Colorado Springs? And that's where the free market comes in and said, wow, there's a lot of millennials here, we've got to respond to that. And that's how you deal with it. We don't spend dollars for one demographic and justify the expense of those dollars and going away from the presentation of core services. We've got to focus on doing what government should do.
Thank you very much, candidates. That concludes the media panel, and thank you very much to the media panel for the questions. This next round is a little bit different. Each of the candidates will have an opportunity to question another candidate. And again, the order of this was determined by number before the positions were drawn for. So what will happen is they'll have up to 30 seconds to ask a question, so please make sure there's a question in there. And then the specific candidate they are questioning will have 1 minute to respond, just one-to-one, so we go through a round of 4 questions here. Just the candidate they ask is responding to this one. We begin with candidate number 4, Commissioner Latham.
Okay, I would like to ask a question of John, and you've discussed a sales tax increase potential, and I'd like to know how you would fund infrastructure in the city, and not only with our roads and bridges, but within the administration of the city, if the voters don't approve a sales tax increase.
Well, if they don't approve either sales tax or property tax or indebtedness, we're going to have to deal with it with the budget as it is. But I think it's incredibly incumbent upon the next mayor, the next council, to be very candid with the voters about our budget situation. As I say, go through a process. Let the private sector do the deep dive. There's groups like the City Committee that's been monitoring the city budget for years. Use them to show what our projected revenues are, what the gap is with any critical public infrastructure that has to be done. And then, as I say, it's a communication with the voters as a whole as to what the remedy is. And only if the voters choose a sales tax is it a sales tax. As you know, Amy, we're sales tax heavy. Property tax would probably be make us more balanced, but the fact of the matter is, take a poll. People like sales tax more because the tourists pay it and it's seen as more progressive.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Makepeace will have the opportunity to question one other candidate.
And I respectfully decline to ask a question.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Miller has a chance to ask one question of one candidate.
Well, I'd like to ask it of all candidates, but I'll ask it of John up here. There's no instance in which I would ever approve of the use of eminent domain. That's the city taking property of a private individual because I swore an oath to the Constitution and life, liberty, property is sacrosanct. Whether it's in an urban renewal area or any other part of town for economic development. Is there a case where you would approve the taking of property for an economic development project?
No. Eminent domain should be reserved for public purposes. For example, as Attorney General, my office was responsible for exercising eminent domain for the expansion of T-Rex in Denver, Cosmix in Colorado Springs. Those are the kinds of things that our founders when they put, even thought about the concept of the government being able to take property with due compensation, that it would be for public purposes. And I do not believe I think this New London case that dramatized the problem that Joel's talking about was a travesty, where a city condemned something just so it could be used to put in a Walmart and increase their tax base. That's not what eminent domain was intended for.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Suthers, you have an opportunity to ask one question of one other candidate.
Well, Mary Lou and I are kind of the ones with the longest track record of public service here. So my question is for Mary Lou. It's been my observation through my public life that I've learned more from my political failures than I have from my political successes. So Mary Lou, can you tell us about a political failure that you've had and what you learned from it?
You know, when I was a young council member, along with Mary Ellen McNally was a young council member, and we had some ideas about a couple of things. One was billboards. We were anti-billboard, and we got carried away with how we were going to regulate billboards. And so we convinced the rest of council to pass this ordinance that all but banned billboards in the Colorado Springs area. And you know what? The billboards have a pretty good lobby, and we got a lot of pushback on that. And what I learned was you can overstep your authority so easily when you're in office. And we listened, and we backtracked, and we modified, and what we ended up doing was, I think, very reasonable, keeping billboards out of neighborhoods and out of the core part of the city. But we have billboards. And, but the lesson is that you have to be very careful when you start passing ordinances and regulating things because it is very easy, if you don't listen to opposing sides, to go too far.
Thank you very much, candidates. That wraps up that round. Before we get to, let's go ahead. Before we get to the closing statements, I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight, for showing such interest, and also for being one of the most polite crowds I've ever seen, which is great. Thank you so much. We've been able to get through this very efficiently, and I appreciate that. With all of that in mind, we have talked about a lot tonight. Sometimes, inherently, the answers are shorter than the candidates would like. So, in this final 90 minutes each, they can rebut anything that's been said earlier.
Okay.
90 seconds. 90 seconds.
I think we'd lose the audience.
Who's got 6 hours?
Here we go.
In these final 90 seconds each, they can rebut, they can expand, they can close, and we begin with candidate 4, Commissioner Latham.
Thank you. Wow, and here we go, 90 minutes. Folks, I appreciate your involvement in this. It is kind of hard to sit up here and answer these important questions in 1 minute and have you really understand the kind of passion and the kind of experience that we have and the plan that we have. But that's exactly what we're trying to talk about for this city. I have been working in local government in this community for years, working together with the Colorado Springs City Council and staff, with other municipalities throughout this community. I've been working with the state of Colorado. I believe that we need to be at the National Conference of Mayors and advocating for this city, as we have been able, and I've advocated in the National Association of Counties at the federal level, to impact the things and to have a voice in the things that do impact us at the local level. The kind of experience that I have in that direct local, line item, line level kind of work that impacts all of us, not just the businesses, but the residences who are impacted by local government. That matters. And that's why I have been able to find the kind of things that will move the needle. And it's not theory. I've been able to prove it. We have increased the transparency that we have at local government. We have increased our credit rating, a government entity with an increased credit rating, and been able to recognize extraordinary operational savings. I want to take that kind of leadership into the city, and I ask for your vote. AmyLathanForMayor.com.
We can applaud these. We can applaud these. Ms. Makepeace.
You know, this is about the 25th forum that we've all participated in, and I was going to propose tonight that we give each other speeches, just for keeping it interesting for us. Seriously, thank you so much for being here. This election is very, very important, as all elections are, but this one particularly is important for the future of Colorado Springs. And we all say a lot of the same things, you know, stop the bickering, gin up the economy, find jobs for young people. Of course we think that, and if we didn't, you shouldn't even be listening to us, because that's what this community needs. But I would say, if you look at us and you think about who can best lead us into the future, I would say that someone who has experience with municipal government is your best bet, because we have seen what happens when you have leadership with no municipal experience. We had a mayor with no municipal experience. We had council with no experience. The attorney, the chief of staff. We had just a kind of a mess, and as a result, we see that we have other messes in the city. And so I would ask you to support me. I would be honored to be your next mayor, and again, I thank you for being here.
Mr. Miller.
Well, I guess Mary Lou doesn't count my time on council as municipal government experience. Listen, I am not a career politician. I'm going to take a significant pay cut to do this job. I love the job I have. I'm a pilot. When this is over, I'm going to go back to the plow as our founding fathers envisioned that we do. I'm willing to put that career on hold to serve this city. I'm the only candidate who has lived through this new form of government. I know what it takes to make it work. We need to provide access to city council to the information and staff, and we need to work together before we bring policy changes. We work together to do it. I know exactly what it takes. If you're concerned with roads, I worked on the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. I know how those dollars get spent and how they haven't gotten spent. If you're concerned with utilities and how we can leverage that for economic development, I served on the Finance Committee as the chair, and how that budget works and how rates are set. If you're concerned about our airport, I've spent a lifetime in aviation and 9 years on the Airport Advisory Commission. I know how we can get more air service here. There's been a lot of talk about connectedness, and I think one of the things that's missing is connectedness with the people of Colorado Springs. We have a lot of connectedness with special interests who have special agendas that they want to get done, and it's fine, we can talk to them. But we're not responsive to citizens anymore. What we've got is a system where we are responsive to special interests, and I vow to you that the special interest I will be responsive to are the citizens of Colorado Springs. Well, thank you very much for listening to me tonight and for taking your time and due diligence to vote for your next mayor.
Mr. Suthers.
Well, thank you all for bypassing March Madness to join us here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, government doesn't build great cities. People do, people like yourselves. But for the people of Colorado Springs to reach their full potential in continuing to build a great city, they need a city hall that is a positive force for change and not one that's a barrier to it. My vision for Colorado Springs is that in the not too distant future, we'll have an infrastructure and amenities that are worthy of the incredible natural beauty that surrounds us, and that in the not too distant future, we'll have increased private sector employment opportunities to the extent that our children and our grandchildren, if they so choose to live here, will find in Colorado Springs a great place to live, work, and play. I've managed very large organizations, and I can effectively and efficiently manage the city of Colorado Springs. I will be a good steward of taxpayer dollars, and I have established relationships throughout Colorado and the nation that I believe can be of great benefit to Colorado Springs in reaching its full potential. Colorado Springs is already a wonderful place to live, but I'm absolutely convinced that working together, we can make it an even better place to live. As your mayor, I promise you I will use every ounce of my energy to get Colorado Springs moving again. And I end where I started. I'm asking you to join me in that effort. Thank you very much.
I'd like to take a moment to just thank all of our partners and our sponsors tonight for making this happen so that we can help inform the community that we'll be making a very important decision next month. I'd like to thank all of you for being here, again, for taking the time. Give yourselves a round of applause. And finally, to these candidates, it is probably impossible for most of us to imagine just how busy they are right now. So for them to give us 2 hours of their time, then 90 minutes, a couple hours of their time tonight is wonderful. It really, really helps. So let's hear it one more time for the candidates. If you wanted to be a candidate. On behalf of all of our partners and sponsors, I thank you for coming tonight, and I thank you for watching at home, and I hope all of you have a wonderful night. Thank you for being here.